Hey, welcome to Joe's Multiverse. I'm Joe, and today I'm going to talk about some action figures. Now, I love action figures. I love a good figure, and a couple of the recent figures that I bought was this green Power Ranger and this Warhammer figure. Now, I don't collect a whole lot of Power Rangers, and I'm not even exactly sure what this is from. I just appreciate a really good figure, or a figure that I like. So I get it, even if I don't collect the whole line. But I was thinking the other day, what are some figures from some things that I would really like to see? So I created a top 10 list of figures that I would love to have that would be available. Now, some of these ended up being some figures that are available, but they just might not be in the price range that I can afford or would be exactly willing to pay. And some of these figures I don't think exist, at least not in the 6-inch scale, or like the quality that I would want in a figure, which isn't too terribly high because I don't like collect hot toys and things like that. They're just too expensive, and I couldn't just get one. I would need a whole collection. So hopefully if I ever do get into something like hot toys, it'll be farther down the road where maybe I can afford something like that. But I have some honorable mentions before I get into my top 10, and one of them is the Jedi Luke Skywalker. Now, I know that there's a Jedi Luke Skywalker Star Wars Black Series figure out there. I just haven't been able to come across it, and when I look it up online, it's a little expensive, but it is a figure that I would really like to get. Another one that I don't believe exists, as far as I know, is a Lex Luthor, the Michael Rosenbaum version from Smallville, the TV show. That was one of my all-time favorite TV shows, and I would love to have a Michael Rosenbaum Lex Luthor. Another one that I know that is out there, because I've seen reviews and pictures and everything of it, is the Superman figure from Hush. I think it's a Mezco, I'm not 100% sure, but I looked it up on Amazon, and it's a few $100s. When I saw the figure itself, I thought it was amazing, and but there's no way that I could ever afford that. But that is definitely on a wish list of mine, is the Superman figure from Hush. The fourth honorable mention of figures that I would love to have is one of the Crow. Now, when Brandon Lee played the Crow, when he was filming it, I believe back in 1992, when that movie came out, it was one of my favorites. I was like 15 years old. It was 1993, and I just loved that movie. I still love that movie. It was so tragic that we lost Brandon Lee. I was a huge Bruce Lee fan, and I wasn't exactly around when he was making movies and was kind of popular. So it was cool to kind of have a almost like a reincarnation of Bruce Lee with his son Brandon Lee, and I just love that movie. And I know that there's a fairly new figure out of the Crow, and I think it's only around $30. So when I'm able to pick that up, I'm definitely going to. And my fifth and final figure that I would like to see and possess is of Jack Sparrow. Now, actually, one of the, not one of my favorite figure, and one of my favorite possessions that I own, one of my very favorite things in the whole world, is this Jack Sparrow figure here. But he's not very articulated. This guy here used to go with me in my vehicle, and then when I was driving over the road, truck driving, he went with me many places. Now, I'm way over here in the northeastern part of South Dakota, but he sat on the steps in Philadelphia, on the Rocky Steps with me once upon a time. He's gone a lot of places with me, many, many miles, and he is just one of my favorite things in the whole world. But if I could find an articulated Jack Sparrow in the 6-inch variety, that would be very, very cool. My Jack Sparrow is never too far from me. Now, number 10 on my top 10 figures I would love to have is Space Ghost. Now, if you're not familiar with Space Ghost, type it into YouTube. It was a cartoon, and he ran like this talk show, the one that I watched, and it was just funny. I just appreciated the humor, and I watch it from time to time. But I remember when it used to come out, I think it was like on the Comedy Channel or E or something like that back in the day. And I think that there's a few actual figures of that character, but I've never been able to find like a nice $20 6-inch type Space Ghost figure. But that's definitely one of the ones on my list that I would love to get. Number 9 is Bruce Lee. Now, it's just a matter of time before I get this, because this is another one that I know exists. There's quite a few of them out there from what I understand. And the one that I was looking at isn't too terribly expensive. I just haven't put forth the effort to get it and pull the trigger on that purchase. But hopefully in this year of 2021, hopefully at some point I'll have this figure, because Bruce Lee was a big thing for me growing up, and idol of mine when I was young, and I would love to have a Bruce Lee in a sidekick type pose on the shelf. Would be very cool. Now, my number 8 is the Skeletor from the Dolph Lundgren version of He-Man from the 80s, that horrible movie that they made of He-Man. I've seen this figure. This is another one I know that exists, and it's like this ultimate, I think there's like silver or it's from the end of the movie where he's like the ultimate Skeletor, and I can't remember, but I think it was pretty expensive, so that's why I haven't gotten this one. I think it was maybe like 100 or 200, I'm not sure, but it was pretty spendy. But I just love this figure, but one day I just might have this one. Now, number 7 on my list for you 80s babies is Macgyver. That was a TV show that I absolutely loved growing up. Seen them all. I actually, a few years ago, watched all the seasons in a row. I think it was on Netflix or something. And I just loved Macgyver. He was just a good guy. It was a wholesome show. There wasn't, you know, a lot of the things that are in TV shows nowadays. Not that I'm some sort of critic on violence and sex on TV shows nowadays, but it was just a good guy. He was a guy with morals, and he was always trying to help, and I really like that. And I've never seen a Macgyver figure, so to find a 6-inch articulated Macgyver figure that looks like Macgyver, that would be very, very cool. Now, number 6 on my list is another figure that I know that there's a few different versions of. An Elite Legend, he's got this figure, I believe it's a wrestling version, but it's Mr. T. Now, that was another show, the A-Team, that was huge to Joe back in the 80s. I used to love watching the A-Team. I remember not wanting to finish my vegetables as a very young kid, and maybe one of my brothers or somebody was at the dinner table and said, if you don't eat all the rest of your food, Mr. T is going to come through that door, you know, and trying to motivate me to finish my supper or something like that. A vague memory of a very small kid, but I loved Mr. T. I liked him in Rocky 3. I remember him being in was it WrestleMania 1 or 2? But I would like to get one of him with his gold chains, and it wouldn't matter if he looked more like the B.A. Baracus or just a regular Mr. T looking figure, but it would be very, very cool to get my hands on a 6-inch Mr. T figure. Number 5 might be a little on the obscure side, but it's a personal hero of mine, and that is Abraham Lincoln. I would love to get a 6-inch figure. Probably would have to be maybe a 7-inch figure, since the man was so tall. But I just really have a lot of respect for this guy. He's my favorite president, the 16th president of the United States. He did a lot of great things. He left a very great legacy. And the more that I learned about him over the years, where he had like this anxiety disorder, and he never stopped growing, so I think he was in a lot of pain, but he had suffered from a lot of depression and a lot of anxiety, and still was able to accomplish so many great things in his life. And I just really looked up to that. I really look up to it. And I've suffered from anxiety and things in the past, so I kind of know what that's like. And then to also be able to accomplish all those great things, I think is just great. But I would love to find a 6 or 7 inch scale version of Abraham Lincoln. Number 4 on my list is from another TV show that I kind of grew up on, and that's of the Highlander. Now, the original Highlander came out in the 80s, I believe, and that starred Christopher Lambert, and that was Connor McLeod. And I wouldn't mind a Connor McLeod figure, but the one that I kind of got in my head right now is the one Duncan McLeod from the actual TV series. I loved this show, and this is where we get the most of the Highlander. If you're familiar with the Highlander, there can be only one, but a figure of Duncan McLeod with his sword, that would be too sweet. He'd be right on the shelf or right on my desk, and he would never go anywhere. It would be so cool to find a Highlander figure. Number 3 on my list is going to sound kind of strange because there's 1,000 of them, but it's a Spider-Man figure, but it's the version from I believe it was from the 70s, later 70s, I think. And I don't think there was a whole lot of them. Maybe it was just a movie or a couple movies. I want to say it was a TV show, but it was the one where he had those, his eye pieces were almost, I think it was kind of like sunglasses material, like a lens, and he had those big wrist web shooters. I mean, they were really big and clunky, but that's the one that I grew up on. That's the one that I remember, other than Spider-Man and his Super Friends, or some, was that what that was called? But the one with the music, dun, 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 kind of sounds like Excite Bike or something from Nintendo, but Spy Hunter. But it's the old version of him, and I really would like to get a figure of that version of Spider-Man. There might be one out there. I've never seen it, but that would be very cool for me, and it would go really great in my Spider-Man collection. And that is just a version of Spider-Man that really has a special place in my heart, because that's where I got most of my Spider-Man growing up. Number 2 on my list is actually, I guess you could consider a 2-pack. This is also from another beloved show of Joe from back in the day when I was a kid, and that's from the Dukes of Hazzard. That's right, Bo and Luke Duke. I had 2 little figures of them, of like the 3 3/4 kind, but I would love to get 6-inch versions of Bo and Luke Duke, all articulated to put with the generally die-cast car. The generally that was iconic back in the day, and those 2 guys would just. Oh, I would just love that. Bo and Luke Duke would be so cool. All right, now for my number 1. You probably have not seen this one coming, but this would be very, very cool, and it would be cool for this channel. It would be cool for me, and I think everybody out there wouldn't mind, especially you figure collectors out there, wouldn't mind one of these of yourself. And mine would be a figure of myself, of Joe, a Joe's Multiverse 6-inch figure. That would be so cool. I'm sure that I could probably get one made, or find somebody that knows some sculpting, and maybe one day I will get that. But I think everybody out there can identify or relate to really wanting a figure of themselves to put on the shelf with their other figures. Back in the day when I used to have a lot of fish, I had a bunch of tropical fish, and I had lots of aquariums. I had all these kind of really cool fish that I would pick out. They were all picked out by me. I had literally hundreds of them. And I always wanted, I'd sit there at night and I wish that I could shrink myself down and get into the tank and swim with my fish. It was just a weird thought that I had. But wouldn't that be cool to go up there and kind of stand with your figures, to see a figure of yourself up there in the collection of all your other figures? I know I would like that, and that's my number one. All right, well, I hope you enjoyed this top 10 list of figures that I would really like to find and get, and I would love to know some of the figures that you would like to get, perhaps some of the ones that don't exist but you wish they did. All right, until the next time we enter the multiverse, I'll see you later.